and I'm here to talk about books, specifically audiobooks. Audiobooks are the greatest companion on a cold, blustery winter day like today. Whether you're wandering along a frozen path, bundled up against the chill, or relaxing at home in the glow of your candlelit living room, there is something so cozy and magical about disappearing into a story as it is read aloud to you. That is, unless you find yourself trapped in the misery of a terrible one. There is nothing that ruins a book like a bad narrator. And I apologize to the books that I have rated lower than I otherwise would have, because the narrator put on terrible voices that made me cringe, or refused to sing the many songs throughout, or were just so dull and lifeless that I was tempted to listen to it on double speed.
I said what I said!
I think I was spoiled in my childhood when I listened to Stephen Fry's audiobooks of Harry Potter every single day from age 7 to age 12. And yes, I was very cool and had a lot of friends. Luckily, though, I have come across many audiobooks since then that have delighted, excited, and enthralled me. Audiobooks that I couldn't wait to listen to again every time I put them down. Even audiobooks that made me shed a tear. I've curated a list of 5 just such audio adventures. If you've been disappointed by a few too many bad productions, or you want to start listening but just don't know where to start, you've come to the right place. What I noticed when putting together this list of my favorite audiobooks is it is pretty male dominated, both in terms of authors and narrators. I also noticed that there are quite a few memoirs, which I stand by because I feel like they make the best audiobooks, but clearly I need to find some more audiobooks that I love that are written and narrated by non-white men. So if you have any recommendations, please leave them in the comments down below. Then I can make a follow-up video when I have more to include on my list. In the meantime, this can be a special edition for men. Men need love and appreciation too. In fact, as a special treat, the through line of these stories will take us on a journey through a man's life. Childhood, young adulthood, trials and tribulations, pearls of wisdom and all. So on this cold winter day, grab your headphones, make yourself a cozy hot drink, and stay tuned for a list of some of the best audiobooks that I have ever heard. Let's start where a man's life begins. The first audiobook I recommend is Born a Crime: Stories from a South African Childhood, written and narrated by Trevor Noah. Trevor Noah's arrival into the world as a mixed-race child in the final years of apartheid in South Africa made his existence technically illegal. And in this wonderfully narrated audiobook, he shares personal stories of his life growing up during that time and the tumultuous period that followed. What I love most about this audiobook is A, his South African accent, which I could just listen to all day, and B, the humor and wit that drives his stories throughout. It's very rare that I will laugh out loud when reading or listening to a book, but the stories that he told and the voices that he did got many a giggle out of me. That said, there are definitely poignant moments in the book that shed light on the harsh realities of apartheid. And far from being just a funny memoir, Born a Crime reflects on the universal themes of family, identity, and resilience. Not only that, but it gives such a unique and personal perspective on the impact of apartheid, and that is a period of history that I'm really interested in learning more about, so I appreciated the opportunity to do that through this fascinating memoir. This is one book that I would definitely recommend listening to over reading, because Trevor Noah's charismatic narration just gives such a wonderful touch to the stories. I usually feel that way about memoirs, which is probably why there are so many on this list. There's just something really special about someone reading their life story aloud to me, okay? Okay, that's enough. Though this next book also starts with a less than ideal story of being born, it takes us even further on the coming of age story of our man. Demon Copperhead is by the amazing Barbara Kingsolver and narrated by Charlie Thurston. Okay, so one of the only non-memoir books on my list of recommendations is also kind of a memoir. Get over it. It feels like this book was written to be narrated. The main character, Damon Fields, tells you about his life as if he's sitting across the table from you. His story plays out against the mountains of southern Appalachia and takes us from the moment he was born to a teenaged mother in a trailer through his experiences of foster care and forced child labor and addiction and loss and friendship and much more. But his life sheds light on something much bigger, too. What is so impactful about this story is its illumination of a group of people who have largely been forgotten and made invisible in our society. Just like Charles Dickens, David Copperfield shed light on institutional poverty nearly 200 years ago. This transposed novel brings our attention to rural people and the challenges they face in a society that has largely abandoned them. I haven't read David Copperfield, by the way. I don't know how much that would have impacted my experience of Demon Copperhead, but if anyone has, I'd be curious to hear your experience. But on the narration of Demon Copperhead itself, Charlie Thurston does an amazing job. He really felt like Damon to me, and over the 21 hours that we spent together, I feel like we became great friends. I highly recommend this audiobook to people who want to build a relationship with a protagonist over the course of their life. Now we're looking at the trials and tribulations of a man's journey into young adulthood through the eyes of his father. This is Beautiful Boy by David Sheff, narrated by Anthony Heald. This could either be the perfect book or the worst book to read during these dreary winter months. If you want to wallow and feel your heart break into a million pieces and indulge in your deepest sadness, then this is the book for you. If, on the other hand, you are already understandably depressed enough because you haven't seen the sun in 2 months, then I recommend skipping ahead. I promise the next book is a lot more upbeat. Since this memoir was followed up with a beautiful film featuring Steve Carell and Timothy Chalamet, not to mention a viral TikTok sound of Steve Carell singing a lullaby that makes me choke up every single time I hear it, like some twisted Pavlov experiment. You've probably heard of it, but for those of you who don't know, Beautiful Boy is a memoir written by David Sheff as he reflects on his son's struggle with meth addiction. His son, Nick Sheff, also wrote a memoir called Tweak, which is still on my list to read, but if any of you have read both, I'd be really curious to hear how the two compare. From my perspective, though, I can't even tell you why I love this audiobook so much. And in fact, I've heard people criticize it for being too self-indulgent and rambling, but I didn't get that impression at all. On the contrary, anytime I wasn't listening to it, I was dying to get back to it. I needed to know what happened next. I was on the edge of my seat. Seeing Nick grow up through his father's eyes, I felt so protective of him. He was like this precious golden child who seemed to suffer after his parents' divorce. And when things started to go downhill, I was gripped. I felt so tense. I needed the narrator to make it all okay. But anytime things were okay, I was still very tense because I knew the other foot was gonna drop. And there were several scenes near the end that had me blubbering like a baby. Anyway, the narrator, Anthony Heald, is a really big reason why I found this so good. I really liked his voice and his narration. It was really engaging and energizing. And he really sounded like it was his story that he was telling. He had the right cadence and rhythm, and I just enjoyed it a lot. So, if you want to feel heartbroken and hopeful and happy and horrified all at once, you may want to listen to this book. On a much more cheerful note, we have Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, narrated by Ray Porter. This is the wild card in the through line of this man's journey through life, but you never know. Sometimes a man will find himself whisked off to space. It happened to Cooper in Interstellar. By the way, Matthew McConaughey will make another appearance later in this video, so stay tuned. Blah 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 blah. This gripping sci-fi follows Ryland Grace on a solo mission to save all of humanity, and the audiobook is a total auditory delight. The narrator, Ray Porter, totally brings out the humor and the tension in the story. Believe it or not, this was one of the audiobooks that made me cry, and I can't even say why because I can't give anything away. What I will say, though, is this is another book that you just need to listen to because the audiobook uses this tool that would be so different if you read the physical book, and I think it makes it way better. It's just awesome. Intrigued? Well, you should go listen to it. It's not like the most amazing writing or a life-changing masterpiece, but it is a fun, light-hearted story about the end of days and this one guy who needs to save the whole world from devastation. Also, there's this one character who I absolutely adore, largely I think because the narrator helped to make them so charming, and I can't say anything more about it, but I recommend to people who like interstellar adventures and fun, lighthearted stories, and also maybe characters that you love so much that they make you cry. Now we've come to the stage of a man's life where he's looking back on all the lessons he's learned and casting those pearls of wisdom before us. Greenlights, written and narrated by none other than the award-winning actor Matthew McConaughey, came as a complete surprise. This isn't your typical celebrity memoir, and it certainly isn't a typical narration, which is what I loved about it. It's a wild ride through McConaughey's unconventional life filled with humor, wisdom, and of course, green lights. I always get frustrated by actors who don't seem to bring any of their acting skills to their audiobooks. That was not the case with Greenlights, which felt like sitting around a campfire with an old friend, swapping stories. He laughed and chuckled, he put on voices, he raised and lowered his volume in perfect alignment with the story. There were even moments where I felt like I could tell he was standing up in the studio. He also shared little tidbits that seemed off the cuff about photographs that were in the book, which made it seem like it would be a totally different experience to actually reading it, but also made me really want to pick up the physical book at some point. Not only was the narration great, but I really liked the philosophy and sentiment conveyed throughout. The memoir sort of doubles as a self-help book built from notes he's taken throughout his life, with quotes and advice and lessons learned, and I really respected his outlook and the way he went about his life. I actually feel like a lot of his thoughts resonated with the philosophy laid out in this mental health book that I really like called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. It's all about presence and consciousness. Overall, he seemed like a really genuine, intelligent, respectful, and interesting person. He inspired me, and given that I wasn't that much of a Matthew McConaughey fan before, that came as a really unexpected surprise, a very pleasant surprise, and it is definitely an audiobook that I can recommend. Now, the man whose life we have followed throughout this video has died, RIP, and I want to end on a positive note with a joke that ChatGPT wrote for me about audiobooks. What do you call a bookstore that only sells audiobooks? A here store. I have no idea what that means. But if you know what our AI buddy was getting at, leave your thoughts in the comments down below, or if you have a better joke about audiobooks that we can end on, then please do share. I would also love to hear if you have either read or listened to any of these books and what you thought, if you totally agree or disagree with my recommendations, and more importantly, if you have any you could recommend. I think fantastic audiobooks are few and far between, so I'm always listening out for new recommendations, especially if you have any that have nothing to do with white men, since clearly I have a lot to discover. Now, before you crank up the volume on your next audiobook, make sure to hit that like button down below, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe so we can go on more literary adventures together. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope to see you again soon.